A shift in the balance of the European Parliament has cast some uncertainty on the future of its policy direction. Far-right parties like France's National Rally saw massive gains in its share of seats. And the questions about what comes next caused stocks to fall and led French President Emmanuel Macron to call a snap election. With us this morning is Akeem Hurlman, co-director of Carleton University's Center for European Studies. Welcome.
Good morning.
In addition to France, far-right parties in Italy, Germany, Austria, and the Netherlands all saw a significant uptake in their country's parliamentary seats. So what do you attribute this growing popularity of the far right in Europe, which is now translating into tangible political gains?
Yes, the far right has now become an established part of the political spectrum in almost all member states of the European Union. And that has been driven mainly by an opposition to globalization, concern about migration, concern about societal changes that many people, especially if they are not living in metropolitan areas, feel left behind by. Add to that some pocketbook issues, especially following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, increase in gas prices, in consumer prices, not dissimilar to what we have seen in Canada. But then if you look at the countries where the far right did especially well in last week's European Parliament elections, we also had national governments which are not doing well, which are seen as being ineffective, as being internally divided. There have been corruption allegations, or in the case of Italy, the far right is actually controlling the government and has had a fairly successful first year. So there are these common European factors, but the far right has been particularly successful where the national factors add to these common European factors.
Let's discuss how. How have these far right parties, once widely seen as extremists, made themselves more palatable to an average European voter?
They have really tried, especially the most successful far-right parties, for instance, the National Rally in France, they have for years tried to become more mainstream. And they have tried to soften some of their rhetoric. They've tried to soften some of their positions. For instance, by and large, they are no longer demanding that their country withdraw from the European Union in the kind of Brexit style, because that is just not supported by public opinion in the existing member states of the European Union. So they have softened some positions and tried thus to become seen as a more mainstream political force.
Let's talk about what you've touched on already, which is the majority in Parliament is still with the centrist parties. The centre-right European People's Party, they won 182 of the 720 parliamentary seats. That's the most of any bloc. But the far right, as we've been discussing, is gaining ground. What could that mean in terms of a broader policy direction? And also, they are fractured, but what happens if some of these extremist parties start to band together to gain more power?
Yes, so the shift in the European Parliament has actually not been that big. Liberal and Green parties lost some seats, far-right parties won some seats, but there's still a very reliable majority of the centrist, center-right, center-left parties. So therefore, I would not expect any big changes in the presidency of the European Commission, for instance. Ursula von der Leyen is in a good position to be nominated again by the European leaders and to be confirmed by the European Parliament to stay Commission president. And after that, we will talk about issue-by-issue coalitions on policy, because that's how the European Parliament works. And there we will see if the European People's Party, that centrist, center-right bloc that you mentioned, if they will be open to increasingly looking to some of the more moderate elements in the far rights for issue-specific coalition. This might well happen, but we have to see it's a strategic decision for the mainstream conservative and Christian democratic parties to make. The main policy issue that may be affected by this, in my view, would be climate change and environmental policy, where already in the last European Parliament, we've seen the center-right become more skeptical of very ambitious climate change measures, and majorities in favor of them have been relatively slim. And this could be one of the areas where the increased seats of the far rights will actually make a difference, and that would mean that Europe becomes less ambitious in its attempt to fight climate change.
Akeem, great conversation with you this morning. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.